Considering that I had bookmarked this Crunchyroll news article, I believe that this was the first time that Girls Last Tour was brought to my attention. The cover of the first manga volume and the key visual for the anime caught my attention, and I don't doubt that the headline was a factor as well. Additionally, Whitebox was animating it. Given that this was the same animation studio that made Steins Gate and Re:Zero, which are two of my favorite anime, the involvement also piqued my interest. But due to the constant influx of anime news and media that I regularly consumed, I presume that this anime faded away from the forefront of my consciousness until this promotional video came out. This PV convinced me to try it out as soon as possible, along with the empathy and curiosity that I felt when I saw this girl's tears. Both the lonely shots and the song made me feel melancholic. I had a good feeling that I would like the show, and Sakuga Blog's article on the interesting anime that would soon air in fall 2017 gave me more reasons to be excited. And when I finally watched the first episode in the evening of October 6, 2017, well, I was hooked. I was so impressed, I earnestly wanted to watch it with my older brother as soon as possible, even though he didn't have much experience reading subtitled shows, and I was initially planning to show him Fate Zero next. And in time, I would regard Girls Last Tour as one of my favorites, and perhaps among the best of those favorites at that. Girls Last Tour, or Shoujo Shumatsu Ryoku, is an Iyashikei anime set in the post-apocalypse, where humanity has largely died out, and two girls travel a barren world, always searching for more food and fuel. Now, it would be reasonable to be perplexed as to how a slice-of-life anime, particularly an Iyashikei one at that, can be post-apocalyptic too. Well, such a combination isn't unheard of. Yokohama Shopping Log is a good example, and I hear that Sound of the Sky is either a slice-of-life or a drama anime set in the post-apocalypse. If I may go on a tangent, I recently acquired a video game called Fragile Dreams: Farewell Ruins of the Moon, which was developed by Namco Bandai Games in cooperation with Tri-Crescendo, and released in Japan during 2009. This game was described as a gentle take on the apocalypse during this panel on 10 great video game openings, and that sales pitch really intrigued me. I'm planning to play that after Nier Automata, but let's get back on track. In order to address the incompatibility that seemingly exists when combining these two kinds of narratives, let's first define the term Iyashikei. According to John's 2007 article here, an Iyashikei anime is one that creates a feeling of nostalgia, melancholy, and catharsis in the viewer, hence why this kind of anime is considered therapeutic. Iyashikei anime typically evokes these feelings through soothing soundtracks that complement the slow pacing, long cuts, emphasis on the environments, and by maintaining distance between the audience and the characters. By limiting the potential empathy towards the characters, the audience is less likely to have strong emotional reactions towards the characters' experiences, thoughts, and struggles. Consequently, there aren't big character arcs in these shows. This anime has these characteristics, while also avoiding common elements of post-apocalyptic stories, such as serious illnesses and injuries, severe starvation, dangerous monsters, and humans that are also dangerous due to being deranged or morally corrupted. But all of this only serves as evidence for its categorization. There are three major reasons for why I really like Girls Last Tour, and why it's one of the best Iyashikei anime that I've seen thus far. It has a wonderful pair of protagonists, a brilliant soundtrack that suits the show to a T and is key to many of the show's highlights, and there are numerous philosophical topics that are all connected, in one way or another, to the overarching theme, which is simple, yet powerful all the same. Our two protagonists follow familiar characterizations that complement each other and are integral to the narrative. Chito is the rational person, while Yui is both the silly, demo one, as well as the brawn, so to speak. Chito is interested in books and directs their journey. Yui loves to eat and lives more in the moment.
記憶なんて生きる邪魔だぜ。
Chito keeps Yuri in line and provides the voice of reason, while Yuri is the comedic relief. Yet, such descriptions aren't everything when it comes to these girls. When Chito was paralyzed with fear when they were high up, Yuri was there by her side, unfazed. Yuri understood the importance of getting along with a feeling of hopelessness, while Chito initially didn't. Chito was there to steady Yuri's hand as she aimed at the pipe filled with hot water. Chito reprimanded Yuri when she got carried away by the flaming destruction. Yuri tried to understand Chito's passion for books and for keeping the past and their memories alive. Yuri empathized with the fish and saved it, even though she really wanted to eat it at first. Chito, despite how limited the resources were, let Yuko join them for the extra company. And after the misunderstanding at the end of episode 1, which seemed quite dire and fraught with tension, the girls quickly made up and let bygones be bygones. This friendship is a key reason for this anime's appeal to me. They have fights, disagreements, and moments of discord aplenty, and they are both humorous and totally expected, for nerves are bound to be strained when you're constantly with somebody else. However, such negativity quickly dissipates. All of their interactions, both positive and negative, are indicative of how much they care for each other. And when their environment frequently dwarfs them and makes them small and insignificant, they find comfort in each other.
安心か。むしろ私はちーちゃんを見つけた時の方が安心したけどね。暗闇の中で。
This relationship is also a factor in how they talk to each other. The dialogue feels natural, and I don't recall any long stretches of exposition from them. Of course, exposition is delivered in this anime, but it's always handled in a way that isn't forced. The only exception is at the series' end, but I think that this is acceptable given the nature and symbolic significance of the mysterious beings. Such natural dialogue lends itself well to the philosophical topics that are brought up. As the characters are thinking about the current topic throughout a portion of or an entire episode, we have the opportunity to follow their trains of thought in lieu of scrambling to understand complicated monologues or debates that are spoken quickly and all at once. This makes the ideas that are presented to be easily digestible. Additionally, the questions and prompts that are presented are simple, and the responses are pretty simple in turn, leading to light philosophical musings that are, again, easily digestible. This kind of dialogue and the effects it produces suit Girls' Last Tour's slow pacing well, and helps to keep you in a relaxed state of mind. Lastly, the girls' relationship is also integral to the main theme of the anime, but I'll get to that later on. The musical score for Girls' Last Tour was composed by Keiichiro Suehiro, who made his talents known in the anime industry with his work on Re:Zero and, to a lesser extent, Space Patrol Luluko. I think his experience in Japanese dramas make him stand out among other composers, as I feel that there are tracks in Re:Zero that are so perfect for the scenes they accompany, and that are unlike what you would expect from the typical anime soundtrack. His contributions to Girls' Last Tour also show his versatility. The tracks he created complemented both the fun scenes, as well as the melancholic, devastating, and cathartic ones. Let's look at some of my favorite scenes where the music was integral to how powerful they were. When the robot caretaker and company were rudely awakened by the larger robot, the robots had a fierce argument. Due to a bug in his system, the larger robot ignored the caretaker's pleas and proceeded to disassemble the one sector that had the last remaining active aquarium tank in the entire facility. As Yuri watched the debris splash into the tank's water, she was reminded of their journey and how water can make you feel tranquility, catharsis, and life. Maybe she was inspired to take action from those splashes, just as she was inspired to make the makeshift instruments during the rain scene. What is clear is that she developed empathy with the fish due to her deep interest in it, as well as from the act of feeding it. She wanted the fish to live, so she saved it. But this wasn't an act of heroism, nor was it defeating evil. Chito, Yuri, and the caretaker killed the large robot. They killed a living being that the caretaker referred to repeatedly as male, and who was the caretaker's remaining kin. A living being that could empathize. A living being that perished with a death cry. A living being who wanted its memory to live on. The main theme played after Chito helped Yuri realize that she wanted to save the fish out of empathy. This track reflected the somber nature of this event, for while the fish and the caretaker can now live a bit longer, they will die someday too. The main theme also reinforced the notion that life ends when reconstruction fails to succeed destruction, which seemed to be happening to the world now. However, I think it also reflected how content we can be, despite such circumstances, as Yuri and the fish bonded together, and our protagonists parted ways with their new friends, in the hopes that they will all live long and presumably happy lives. When Chito, Yuri, and Yuko climbed onto, entered, and explored the submarine out in the middle of nowhere. The track that played during the PB I showed earlier also played here. Not only did it generate an atmosphere of mystery and adventure as the curve drew ever closer to its end, I think that watching the PB beforehand made the use of this track more effective. In that PB, you didn't know what to expect. There was mystery to be had, and you wanted to know more. Perhaps you too felt empathy or sympathy for the crying Chito and felt awe alongside these girls as they stared at the stars. Those feelings, except for the feelings of sympathy, came back to me during this scene. As Ishi started up the plane and flew off, I showed the optimism that they all held. The test plane was a success. They had all worked hard day after laborious day to get this plane constructed before the warm period ended. Ishi was going to fulfill her goal, her dream. She was going to reach the other city, and she was going to be the last pilot in human history, and her feet would be etched into that history. She was going to beat hopelessness, because if our protagonist could escape hopelessness, which was demonstrated when Ishi fixed the Kettenkrad, their home, then surely Ishi can too. As the plane flew ever higher, so too did the main theme support our optimistic attitudes. Yuri exclaimed aloud, "She did it!" as the Freeman flight took her. My stomach plummeted, and I shared Chito's shock when she sank to the ground. But thankfully Ishi lived. As they looked at her floating downwards with their telescopes, they observed that she was smiling, with contentedness and peace, to which Yuri stated that she must have come to terms with a feeling of hopelessness. Chito didn't understand what she meant. But for me, it was at this exact moment that I understood why she kept singing of hopelessness and telling Chito to get along with that feeling during this episode, over and over. And the melancholic song continued to play to its conclusion as the girls departed the old airbase, and the final cut focused on the airplane blueprints as Yui sang her song of hopelessness.
絶望絶望絶望絶望は絶望で絶望だから
While all of the scenes in this video section are special in their own way, the Wayne segment was especially amazing to me. It reminded me of a similar scene in the animated Disney movie, Tarzan, where the gorillas made music from all the objects in the camp. The joy of experimentation and creativity, as well as the joy of doing so with friends, that joy can be found in a forest of cement trees, provided by the Wayne that at first glance was undesirable and gloomy. Girls' Last Tour goes further with its makeshift music though, by having the scene where the drop of water splashes into a pool of water, sending out illuminated ripples of blue, play in each of the first two sections of the episode. These ripples even appeared at the beginning of the first episode. What this results in is a build-up to the Wayne section, because we've been aware of these droplets for a while now, and now Yui became aware of the unexplainable magic. Curiosity overcame her, and she set up makeshift instruments with the help of Chito, and what resulted was a nigh mystical, soothing experience. And when the rain subsided, the magic disappeared. The falling water droplets sounded like any old water droplets, falling onto objects and into puddles. yet the sun shone through the clouds, and the girls, still entranced by the experience that the rain blessed them with, were now further awed by the ethereal atmosphere outside their shelter. Yui asked Chito if the world was always like this, aka beautiful or magical, which Chito confirmed. Then they both agreed to let their break continue, and the magic of the droplets resumed. When Chito and Yui were looking at the pictures and watching the videos stored on the camera, Yasoi Kyoku Daitu Ban Henho Chuchu Opus 92 Nocturne played, which is one of the most well-known nocturnes composed by Frédéric Chopin. This track provided effective juxtaposition both when the unsettling and violent videos were on screen, and when these videos were still fresh in our minds as the music complemented the happier videos. Not to mention that as this tranquil piece reached its conclusion and the world ended in the videos, this video was the last one to be seen.
少しだけ寂しくない気がするね。そうだね。
Owari no Uta. As Jack at Under the Scope described it in his UTS Anime Awards video for 2017, this melancholic track feels like the series boiled down to a single piece of music, inducing such a visceral response in me each time I hear it. I agree with that wholeheartedly. The first time this song played clearly was when Chito and Yui reached the surface from the underground train station in an abrupt fashion. This section of the episode paralleled the first section of the first episode, when they were trying to get out of the maze-like interior of the gigantic building. In both sections they passed by objects that would appear later on in the story, with the first episode having the bound statue, and this episode having the giant robots. And if you think about it, there were only 2 times that they were trying to get out of a massive space with no natural light coming in, and into the outside world. Only 2 times that they headed for an exit, whose light obscured what lied beyond. And these 2 episodes had those sections. In the first episode, you felt relieved that they got outside. They were free from that dark, confining place with no food or fuel, a place that for all you know, could have been the entire setting of the show. This was an achievement that was rewarded with a beautiful, starry sky. However, it was different this time around. By this point, we know more about this world and its state of being. We have a better understanding of what life is like here, and how our protagonists perceive the world and live in it. I felt that as the elevator hurtled upwards and the music from the radio got clearer and clearer, their safety was in question. But they survived, and they got out of that dark space. But this time, we weren't greeted with stars. There's no celebratory soup here. Instead, we were greeted with the end of the day, and a harsh yet beautiful, entrancing light that washed over everything. They were grateful to be alive, not because they reclaimed their freedom, but because they managed to survive dangerous external factors beyond their control. And the feeling that was felt after this near-death experience, that feeling was captured in Owari no Uta. The second time this track played clearly is when the mysterious creatures appeared, but I'll go into more detail on this later on. And last, but not least, the ending scenes of episode 1. Chito was afraid that Yui was going to shoot her. There was a conflict of interest here, and Yui wanted more of Chito's rations. Yui was a glutton, and she was hungry. Very hungry. Yui threatening Chito for food wasn't outside the realm of possibility at this point in the story. But Yui then ate the rations she stole. Chito reprimanded her severely for such a poorly considered joke.
Oi, Yuri! いた! Hehehe.
and everything calmed down. As the girls laid on the snow in order to catch their breath. Seijaku no Taibiji played. They go at it one more time, Chito slamming her head into Yuri's stomach, and Yuri trying to body slam Chito. Then it's over. They let bygones be bygones as they ate the snow, both for the sake of curiosity, and to fill their stomachs. In this world, where humanity is going, war doesn't exist. There won't be any massive, violent conflicts of interest anymore. Even small ones will be extremely rare, as they just make you hungrier or leave you worse off in the end. All that's left is the aftermath of such conflicts, and two friends staring out into the city as the snow slowly descended. These scenes made me experience feelings that I rarely experience, anime or otherwise. Feelings that are hard to describe. I would say that it was cathartic, or enlightening. I felt wonder and awe. I felt alive. I lay on my bed, alone, and watched, and listened to these scenes over and over again that night. This experience touched my very core, and for that, I loved it. The major theme of Girls' Last Tour is transience. The pedantic romantic talked about this briefly in their own video, Blissful Minimalism of Girls' Last Tour. In that video, they mentioned that this anime embodied both the fleeting nature of the environment and the events therein, as well as how the girls can stay put for only a short period of time. I'll be expanding on these ideas shortly, but first, I would like to start with memories. Chito, who is the most literate of the two, emphasized how much she valued books, since they're windows into the past, and into fictional worlds created by people from that past. Therefore, these books keep the past alive. This value of hers was also supported by her being responsible for the journals. She keeps track of their inventory so that they can survive, and she records what they've experienced so that the past won't be forgotten. Chito cherishes these books because they satisfy her curiosity. Additionally, in the face of an empty, crumbling world, and humanity's history fading away, I would presume that she feels obligated to do her part. The introduction of the camera adds to this topic, as they take pictures of the surroundings and of each other. As Yuri stated, their food would disappear, the town would fall apart, and the statues would break down, but pictures have the potential to outlast them all. Then there were the graves, where the possessions of the deceased were all that's left of their existence. Chito understood the importance of these objects, and she wanted to leave them be, out of respect for those individuals. But despite these attempts to preserve the past, the world moves on, and humanity's existence slowly fades. Weapons lay unused and slowly broke down amidst the snow. A book was burned. Maps were lost. Towers and facilities fell apart. The sectors in Episode 9 were taken apart. This is where the theme comes into play. All things must pass. Nothing is permanent. We should accept the transience that permeates the world so that we can be happy. We should get along with a feeling of hopelessness. Ambitions, like mapping the city, flying to the next city over, or taking care of the last surviving fish in its aquarium, may not be fulfilled, and that's okay. We should look to the present, appreciate the simple fact that we're alive, and derive enjoyment out of day-to-day experiences. That's what Kanazawa learned before setting off. That's what Ishii learned as she floated down to the bottommost levels. She tried her hardest. She stressed so much as she worked long hours every day to get the plane ready before the warm period ended. And now that it's all over, she can relax.
でもまあ、失敗してみれば気楽なもんだな。
She had a look of contentedness, and while she may very well perish down now, I think she's okay with that. But getting along with the feeling of hopelessness doesn't mean you should just roll over and give up. Kanazawa still wanted to make maps, even though he might lose them again. Maybe Ishii will try to get back to the airbase and try again, or maybe she'll try to get to the city through a different means. The robot caretaker, who admitted that this aquarium won't last forever, will still carry out its duty to the very end. Stay true to your values and your preferred way of life, but also keep in mind that things won't always work out, and that there may not be an ultimate destination at the end of the path. So how does this apply to our protagonists? In order to answer that, I will first bring your attention to the mysterious creatures. In a world with giant robots that can cause mass destruction, it's no surprise that these creatures would be revered as deities, and that their likenesses were immortalized into statues. These creatures digest nuclear materials, bullets, motor oil, electronics, and other weapons and power sources. They can clean up after industrial disasters and wars, thus enabling humanity's industrialization and violent conflicts. Really, I wouldn't be surprised if such creatures came to be worshipped in today's society, provided that their population started small and increased slowly. Anyways, given that lotus flowers, which could represent purity, enlightenment, and persevering and triumphing over suffering, among other values, were in the temple, these mysterious creatures could have also been worshipped as beings that stood above destruction, and who could alleviate one's suffering and elevate them to their status. At the very least, the inscriptions do support the people's belief that the creatures would release you from your sadness and worries, and light the way to happiness after death. And if I may go on a tangent, there was a statue bound by ropes inside the building in episode 1. I think that this represented how the gods had no influence in that place. It being bound also added on to the protagonist's helplessness amidst that dark maze. Freedom and life were restricted there, and in their place were constraint, hopelessness, and the cold. Going back to the main topic, what I do confidently believe in is that if we entertain the notion that these creatures are indeed gods, then there is another reason that they are the gods of this world, a reason that may or may not have been shared by humanity. They are the gods of transience. Human society advanced such that multi-layered cities reached for the sky, potatoes grew on vines, and giant robots could destroy entire districts. And it is when humanity reached their apex that they destroyed themselves. And these creatures helped to break the remnants of their society down. They even broke down the camera and all the memories of humanity inside it. The wars, the families, the politics, Kanazawa and his friend. The end of the world, these girls and their happy club. The statues, Yuko, Chito and Yuri, everything, all gone. These creatures are helping to bring the world back to zero. Like their fungus-like appearance suggests, they're breaking down the dead so that life can spring anew. They represent transience, for all things must pass. And if their word is reliable, then Chito and Yuri are the only humans left in this city. Even the possibility of survivors on the highest level is slim. But these girls don't mind that they're the only ones left, because their way of life is transience itself. They are getting along with the feeling of hopelessness, because they have empathy. And it's through that empathy that they enjoy the times they spend with the people they meet, and with each other. They are alive. When they were rejuvenated by the hot bath, they felt that this was paradise. When they were at the temple, Yuri stated that this artificial paradise didn't feel like paradise to her. She was most happy when she found Chito in the darkness beforehand. If any survivors felt most at ease in this temple, or in worshipping those statues, then that's a totally valid way to live, and to cope with the end of the world. For our protagonists, they're most at ease with each other. Nothing else really matters in the world of Girls Last Tour. War doesn't exist, violent conflicts of interest don't really exist, gods are loosely defined and don't really matter. Housing, survivors, weapons, the past, they all don't matter in the grand scheme of things. When the question of the one thing you couldn't live without was brought up, our protagonist couldn't give an answer to Kanazawa. I feel that they can now. They need each other.
なのかな。全然暖かくなくて、真っ暗で何も見えなくて、誰もいなくて。じいちゃんがいなくなったら、私どうしよう。まるですごい明るいよ。バカクズモミ。まだ怒ってる。これって大切な水の中にちっちゃんの好きとかなあ大事だ。でもちいちゃんどうして返事してくれなかったの？市役所ってあそこでごめん悲しいの？やったら行こうか。大丈夫だって。
Where does their spiraling journey, a journey where they sleep, wake up, eat, move, and sleep again, end? It ends with death. But it's the journey that matters. They have each other, and together they'll keep moving, see new things, and learn new things about both the world and themselves. When the big creature told Nuko to join them, Nuko initially refused, but it relented, and before it climbed onto the adult, it looked back at Chito and Yuri, and said its last words, clearly, for the first time.
お前はいいな。仲間がたくさんいて。さよなら。
And if you know who voices Nuko, and if you've watched Yuki Yuna is a Hero, the Washio Sumi chapter, then you may have experienced how I felt. Incredible sadness as a result. Especially since cute, adorable Nuko
20食べて。おお、チャレンジャーだな。食えないものに価値はねえ、もがもが。なんか言うみたいなこと言い出したな。
was with the protagonist longer than the other side characters were. And that was intentional, as it revealed the abilities of the creatures and their resemblance to the statues to us. It showed the girls the power that man reveled in and killed themselves with. It led them to the final stage and enabled them to see humanity's past with all its optimism, beauty, ugliness, destructiveness, and sadness. One last time. It let them empathize with a girl eating french fries with her friends, to the exclusion of all the violence and death in the other videos. This was what they treasured, the peacefulness and contentedness of the home. This was what humanity was to them, and Chopin's composition emphasized this. The task completed, the creatures floated like angels into a sky adorned with beams of light. Perhaps they were going to go hibernate, and wait for their time again. Regardless, during this scene and the creature's conversation with the girls on top of the submarine, Owari no Uta was playing. Jack described it as an encapsulation of this show, and that statement is so incredibly on point. This song is the voice of the creatures. These creatures represent transience. Therefore, this song is transience, with all of its hopelessness, sadness, tranquility, and catharsis. And as they disappeared from view, the submarine shut down. and the girls moved onwards. And maybe they won't make it to the highest level. Maybe they will, but nobody will be there. But when they're aiming for the moon, the destination isn't the point. They'll go where the wind takes them. And I'm sure that this will lead to more beautiful experiences, just like the first time. Chito and Yui will be fine, because they have each other, because they're friends. And for them, that's all they need in order to be happy.
行こうって言ったのちいちゃんじゃん。そうだっけ。でも月か。それもいいか。約束だよ。ああ。ルルルルルルルルルルルル今世界が動き出したあらゆる音楽とともにふと気がつけばいつまで